Thank you very much. So good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. Welcome to the joint meeting of Assembly Ways and Means and Senate Finance. We have two very interesting budgets in front of us today. So our standard disclosures, please make sure that anything that makes a noise is turned off. For the public, you can access this meeting through the Nellis website. It's very user-friendly. And with that, if I could go ahead and have our committee secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Brooks.
Here.
Senator Cannizzaro. Senator Dennis.
Here.
Senator Dondero Loop.
Here.
Senator Gokachia.
Here.
Senator Hammond.
Here.
Senator Kiekefer.
Here.
Senator Ratty. Senator Severs-Gansert.
Here.
Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson.
Here.
Assemblyman Frierson.
Here.
Assemblywoman Gorlow.
Here.
Assemblyman Hafen.
Here.
Assemblywoman Howdigi.
Here.
Assemblyman Levitt.
Here.
Assemblywoman Miller.
Here.
Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno. Assemblywoman Peters.
Here.
Assemblyman Roberts.
Here.
Assemblywoman Titus.
Here.
Assemblywoman Tolles.
Here.
Assemblyman Watts.
Here.
And Chair Carlton.
And I am here. Thank you very much. As is the time of season, we will be having a number of members having to go in and out of the committee meeting. So when they are gone, they will be turning off their camera, but they'll probably be either presenting or doing work in other committees. So just so the public understands, if they see that member might be another place in the building at another meeting. So with that, committee, I believe we can go ahead and start, and I'm going to have to close my window here in a second. I feel like I'm living in a spotlight. Our first agenda item today is the Cannabis Compliance Board. We have Mr. Klimas available, the Executive Director. If we could go ahead and have him available.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Joint Committee. My name is Tyler Klimas. I am the Executive Director of the Nevada Cannabis Compliance Board. I appreciate the opportunity to be here to address the Joint Committee today and present the CCB budget for fiscal year 22 and 23. I'm also going to give a brief overview of the CCB and talk about how this agency was brought online over the past 12 months, as we are a brand new state agency. I'll also talk a little bit about the agency's responsibilities and how we oversee the cannabis industry in the state and how that differs from past iterations of cannabis oversight. I feel like these points are important to understand the reasoning behind the budget request before you today. So a couple remarks on the history before we pull up our PowerPoint here. As I mentioned, we are a new state agency. The CCB was created through Assembly Bill 533 during the 2019 legislative session. Cannabis oversight in Nevada has had an interesting history in its transition from the Department of Health and Human Services when medical cannabis was legalized, then to the Department of Taxation in 2017 when cannabis was legalized for recreational use. As laid out in ballot question 2 in 2016, cannabis, if legalized for recreational use, was to be regulated like alcohol in the state of Nevada. However, even in 17, there were recommendations that an eventual creation of a single regulatory body to oversee cannabis in the state would likely be necessary at some point. The next 2 years, 17 to 19, saw its share of issues emerge in the industry and for those that regulate it as the legal cannabis industry took off. The industry, frankly, outpaced and outnumbered the resources and capacity for what was the Marijuana Enforcement Division to appropriately handle what was fast becoming and remains today a very complicated and high-stakes industry. The need then for a new home for oversight became immediate. So Assembly Bill 533 authorized the CCB to begin as an agency on July 1st of last year, 2020. My position was authorized to start on January 1st, 6 months prior, to begin that transition of cannabis oversight responsibilities from Taxation Department to the Cannabis Compliance Board. The CCB was to be a new, centralized, standalone regulatory body to oversee the cannabis industry and work to mimic how the Nevada Gaming Control Board regulates gaming. The time frame in place gave us a very short runway to stand up this agency and fully transition oversight. When we began to lay this framework for the CCB, we immediately faced a number of challenges. We inherited a backlog of open disciplinary cases that had been untouched, some stretching back to 2018. We had a general lack of clarity on many of the ownership structures already in the industry due to minimal and sometimes non-existent background investigations. That, plus reports of bad actors and foreign nationals trying to buy influence into the industry, led to this implementation of an extended review period, which halted any transactions regarding change of ownership or sales of licenses within the industry. This review period would last for 9 months until the CCB took over in July, signifying that the proper guardrails were now in place to begin moving forward again. And we took over in the middle of a very public and very arduous lawsuit stemming from a competitive licensing round in 2018. Litigation that saw both sides, the state and the industry's reputation, severely tarnished. Moving forward to today, we are nearly through this list of old, outdated cases and are now operating like an efficient regulatory body should operate, issuing new complaints and filing disciplinary action, including sizable fines and license revocations for those licensees that are found not to be in compliance with the state's regulations. We have designed and created a brand new investigations division within the CCB, which I'll talk about later, that focuses on in-depth background investigations and suitability determinations on those currently in and those who want to come into the Nevada cannabis industry. Business transactions, including changes of ownership and interest, are now moving forward again, albeit in a different way with more detailed requirements. Transitioning this oversight body and clearing the deck so that the state could realize a fresh start in cannabis oversight was not a small task. It was accomplished by the incredible efforts of not only the 50 individuals who make up my staff at the CCB, but with our partners at other state agencies like the Taxation Department and the Attorney General's Office. We also have an incredible 5-member board appointed by the governor whose expertise in many of these matters has served to help guide this agency. So it's because of these efforts we have a much better story to tell today, and that we look forward to not only introducing you to the CCB and working with this joint committee to really continue efforts to push this industry and agency forward in a responsible and effective way. I believe that starts with ensuring we have the necessary resources and organizational structures in place to do just that. I've got my incredible staff and division heads here with me, some that have expertise in cannabis stretching back to the medical days here in Nevada. So we very much look forward to any questions that you, Chair, or members of the Joint Committee have when our presentation concludes. So with that, Tiana, if you could pull up the PowerPoint, I'll go ahead and get started. Great. So I'll begin briefly with the makeup of the new Cannabis Compliance Board. The CCB is made up of 5 board members appointed by the governor. This board acts as the final decision maker for regulatory matters, discipline, and final licensing within the cannabis industry. The board is currently chaired by former Nevada Supreme Court Chief Justice Michael Douglas. The CCB staff currently authorized at 60 FTEs, however, with a number of positions on hold for budgetary reductions, acts as the administrative arm of the CCB, performing all functions necessary to carry out oversight of the industry. I'll touch on our agency functions later. Also created in AB 533 was the Cannabis Advisory Commission. This is a 12-member commission created with 8 industry appointments to act in advisory capacity to provide insight and non-binding recommendations on regulatory matters to the board at the request of the board and the executive director. Now, as I mentioned, the CCB took over the reins of the cannabis industry 8 months ago. And with this transfer of oversight, we ushered in a new way cannabis establishments were to be regulated. We began to realign our operations and our structure to adhere to the public policy laid out by this body in AB 533. That is strict regulation of all aspects of the industry and an importance placed on protecting the public trust and confidence in a safe and well-regulated cannabis industry. We developed our mission statement and guiding principles to reflect these values, and all agency decisions and actions are run through this document. To give you an idea of some of our agency's operations and regulatory responsibilities, we regulate and oversee Nevada's 743 operational medical and adult use licenses. We promulgate regulations within the Nevada Cannabis Compliance Regulations, the NCCR, to guide the industry and ensure licensees remain in compliance. We audit and inspect all licensed facilities. This includes in-person audits, desk audits, financial audits, and in-depth public health-focused inspections of facilities. We conduct investigations, both regulatory and criminal, and work with state and local law enforcement partners on statewide actions pertaining to cannabis-related issues. We perform in-depth background and suitability checks on new individuals and companies that are looking to be a part of this industry in our state. We collect fees and fines. We facilitate meetings of the board and the commission, along with many other duties you see on the screen. So moving to the organization of our agency, as part of the development of the CCB, we took a hard look at the current organizational structure and made significant changes to address not only what we perceived as upcoming needs, but also what we knew we would have to accomplish, again, to satisfy the public policy goals. This assessment led to one of the budgetary requests on reclassification that's before you today, and that I'll address shortly. The agency needs, after our assessment, naturally fit into 4 divisions of the CCB: administration and licensing, audit and inspections, investigations, and enforcement. Our administration and licensing division maintains the database of our operational and conditional licenses. This is our database of over 10,000 active registered agents in the cannabis industry. And it's responsible for processing applications for agent cards, packaging requests, change of locations for current establishments, licensing and renewal application, and also works with local governments to ensure the appropriate local zoning and permitting has taken place before any approval. The Admin and Licensing Division also works closely with the Department of Public Safety and the FBI to conduct background checks and review background reports of applicants applying to receive a Nevada Cannabis Agent Registration Card. Next is the Audit Inspection Division. This division performs in-person inspections of all cannabis facilities, including routine inspections, pre-opening inspections, facility modification approvals, and any follow-up necessary for investigations. Our facility inspectors are all registered as environmental health specialists, allowing for in-depth inspections on such things as imminent health hazards, safety of ingredients and final products, sanitation of facilities, use of equipment, and other public health matters. We also have dedicated lab inspectors in this division, tasked with examining Nevada's 10 certified testing laboratories. These lab inspectors each have decades of experience in laboratory inspection and analysis, with expertise in analytical chemistry, microbiology, and quality assurance. Finally, we have a suite of auditors whose main task is to now audit inventory and tax reports submitted by our licensees to ensure what the licensee is reporting both in sales and inventory match up correctly with our seed to sale tracking system. This tracking system is what we use to have real-time insight into all licensees' operations to ensure daily compliance and that all products are legally sourced and sold. This role for auditors, focusing on data analysis through our metric system, is much different than the role auditors played in the previous oversight structure. Investigations is the next division. This division is a brand new division for cannabis oversight in the state. As I referenced at the beginning, that 2019 report of possible foreign influence, in addition to just general weaknesses in the background investigation and suitability review of current owners and new owners entering the industry by buying licenses, really necessitated this wholesale change in how we perform background investigations. Early in 2020, before the CCB was fully authorized, I began working with former Gaming Control Board Chair Sandra Douglas Morgan, and we worked out an arrangement to essentially borrow, if you will, expertise in the form of gaming staff to help craft our new investigations division. It's a great story because that expertise eventually joined our agency full-time and now leads our investigations division. This position is also one of the requested reclassifications into a division chief included in our budget requests. A reclassification that's needed to ensure we're able to continue to attract and keep talent on our agency roster. Reimagining the state's role in investigating and vetting potential licensees in the industry has allowed us to move past a lot of those initial concerns and heartburn that not only the governor and lawmakers had, but members of the public had regarding the issues that plagued the prior oversight body. The investigations division now vets all potential licensees and affiliated owners, officers, and board members. This work, which is similar to gaming, includes now conducting in-person interviews, a full suite of background and due diligence checks, and a financial analysis. Our investigations division reviews and processes all transfer of interest requests. So these are the requests to either transfer ownership internally or to sell ownership to an outside individual or company, all of which did not exist before the CCB took over in July. The investigations division also reviews all management contracts and changes to officers and board members and provides our board members with comprehensive investigative reports to help the board make its licensing decisions. Lastly is the Enforcement Division. Our Enforcement Division evaluates all complaints made against a licensed facility, including incident reports that are filed by the facilities themselves. The Enforcement Division includes post-certified enforcement agents that also work with our inspectors and auditors during investigations. Per AB 533, all disciplinary investigations are performed in conjunction with the Nevada Attorney General's Office. We have 2 spectacular senior deputy attorney generals assigned to the CCB, and they work with our team to review investigations and prepare disciplinary complaints when warranted. The board is the final arbiter in all disciplinary matters and has final approval regarding any settlement agreements. Civil penalties in our industry can include warnings, fines, destruction of products, suspensions, and revocations of licenses and agent cards. Our Enforcement Division also partners with local and state law enforcement on joint investigations and information sharing. Now to provide some brief statistics and general industry information that I think will be helpful. And again, we're happy to answer any follow-up questions on any of these numbers. In fiscal year 21, we anticipate processing over 18,000 agent registration cards. In reality, it's likely going to be closer to 20,000. We've been seeing around 60 applications a day that has not slowed down for most of the year, which is again, more than we had anticipated. In fiscal year 22, you'll see there is a drop. This is because our agent card renewals beginning in July of last year, they went from an annual renewal period to a 2-year renewal period. But again, given this year exceeding expectations, we're certainly interested in seeing how big of a drop we actually realize as this industry continues to pick back up. As I mentioned, there are 743 total medical and recreational operational licenses statewide. Many of these licensed medical and recreational establishments are located together. We call that co-located, but owned by the same operator. Cannabis tax collection, obviously, which is a function that's handled by the Nevada Department of Taxation. However, we work closely with taxation on financial audits when necessary and to ensure our licensees are up to date on taxes and are remitting the appropriate amount of taxes. There are 2 excise taxes collected on cannabis sales. It's a 15% excise tax collected on the first wholesale transaction of cannabis products. That wholesale collection goes into our budget account and funds our agency operations before the remainder is transferred back to the DSA. And then there's the 10% excise retail tax collected on the retail sale of products at retail establishments. That goes directly to taxation for distribution. The CCB works in conjunction with the Department of Taxation to set the fair market value of cannabis and cannabis categories every 6 months, in which the 15% wholesale excise tax is applied. Finally, I wanted to give a brief overview of the impact of COVID-19. I think it's important in how the CCB worked through these challenges and how we ensured both the industry stayed active and really protected the revenue stream to the state during this pandemic. At the end of the day, and what still remains today during the continued crisis, is that COVID necessitated a need for flexibility, both within our agency and within the industry. The cannabis industry was considered essential and delivery services were left available at the beginning of COVID. However, retail stores were closed to in-person customers. This required a major pivot for many of the retail facilities throughout the state. Now, we've always allowed delivery here in Nevada, but when we moved to delivery only in those first few weeks, licensees just didn't have that infrastructure in place, like vehicles and drivers, to facilitate that kind of expanded business. Thus, the CCB developed a virtual vehicle inspection process. This allowed our inspectors to inspect virtually delivery vehicles and approve them to begin service in a very short amount of time. As we moved through the pandemic, we then developed a curbside pickup model. This was something that was not available to licensees before COVID and not provided for in our regulations. We designed this curbside model, including developing the rules and restrictions licensees would need to follow, and again allowed for retail facilities here to pivot their operations further and meet the needs of consumers while following our strict COVID guidelines. We also lost in-person services for agent registration cards. These cards are needed to work in the industry, and so the CCB developed a web-based agent registration card application. So that replaced the outdated paper application and allowed for a much more streamlined application process as people started to get back to work on the retail side. The CCB, similar to many other agencies, was able to issue extensions to its temporary approvals, so both for delivery vehicle IDs and temporary agent cards. Those extensions are both still in effect today due to the continued health crisis. So now I'll present our budget request and chair and committee. Again, I really appreciate that opportunity to provide the overview of the agency.
And Mr. Klimas, if I could stop you right there, please. Sure. Because this is new, and this is not a policy committee, so I want to make sure that all the members are aware that we really don't want to get into any policy discussions. The policy's been decided. You've been created. I think you've done an excellent job considering the circumstances and dealing with the bill and the pandemic and everything. But I know there might be just some general questions from the committee. So I'd like to go ahead and possibly handle those. Absolutely. And then get into the budget. So committee members, my Teams is not working, so it's hard to see who wants to be recognized. But if there is someone who would like to ask a question right now, this might be a good time, and then we'll get into the budgets. Not seeing one. Oh, yes. I have Ms. Benitez Thompson and then Assemblywoman Titus. So I'll go to Ms. Benitez Thompson first.
My apologies. So I just wanted to clarify. So any questions that we have that are outside of the specific budgets we're going to address, you are okay with us kind of asking right now if we needed refreshers or primers or on? Okay.
Right. And this is a brand new budget. So this is the first time we've heard this. So if there's anything anyone needs to understand, I want everybody to have a good knowledge base. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Then that was my question. So
okay. Dr. Titus, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you. If I might, I appreciate that. You mentioned early on in your comments regarding your staff and the scientists doing the regulatory process and making sure that your labs are making sure that the advertising is accurate. So how many labs are out there? In other words, for everybody's information, you have to test this like any other food product or any other service, that when somebody says they're selling this product, that it has X amount of CBD in it or X amount of marijuana in it or whatever the labeling is. So how many labs do you have confirming the manufacturer's claims?
And thank you, Assemblywoman, for the questions. Tyler Klimas for the record. You're correct. So we have 10 certified testing facilities statewide. I believe 2 in the north and 8 in the south.
Are there any consequences then if it fails to live up to what it says it has in it? What's the fall through on that?
So Assemblywoman, thank you, Tyler Klimas for the record again. And if I could have an entire lab division, I say this all the time, I would, and I hope I do someday. What you're touching on is one of the most important parts of this industry. We consider these lab testing facilities, they are the gatekeeper of the industry. It's what keeps our consumers safe. And so two-part answer to that, not only do we have mechanisms, let's say, a product is found to have high levels of yeast and mold. However, it did pass, right? Because it can't be sold unless it passes a lab. But, things can happen, right? Mold can grow. And so, in a situation where it's not malicious, right, we issue public health safety advisories. And we do that, I don't want to say frequently, we have, and hopefully not frequently, but we certainly do that on a regular basis if we find product that's out there that shouldn't be. In regards to how the labs act as a state licensee, and they are just every much of an establishment as any other cultivation, production, or retail store. Therefore, they're regulated just as strict. And to be honest with you, we just finished a 14-month investigation on one of our labs that we're now going to go forward with. It was issued at, I believe, the last or 2 board meetings ago. 14 months with our lab inspectors, and that just gives you an idea of how complex this section of the industry is when you're dealing, as you know, with standard operating procedures and lab testing. But again, it's something that is top of mind, always has been top of mind for us, and something we look to expand greatly given the opportunity.
just a clarification on that. So, the FDA follows whether or not we have medications out there that are accurate and they live up to what they say they are. I'm just wanting to make sure that we have some sort of consumer protection in there. And where do the consumers go to know that this store is good, this one's not good? How do people know when they get a bad product?
So, they should never get a bad product because it has to go to testing first. And what every single test produces what we call a certificate of analysis, and that is a full sheet with all of testing, yeast and mold, aspergillus, pass, fail, I'm not an expert in this, and I have an expert that we can certainly bring up here, but that sheet is available to consumers. If you go to a retail facility and you purchase product, you can ask to see that COA, and they are required to show that COA to you. We're working on, and I think actually Assemblywoman Peters has a bill out there. Something that we internally support is going a step further and making sure that information is also posted online for the public. So really transparent, accountable, and really easy to access is something that we're doing not only with lab testing, but something we want to do throughout the industry.
Thank you for those answers, and thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing me that line of questioning. Thank you.
You're welcome, Dr. Titus. So I have one question. When I look at the agent cards, I want to understand who all gets that agent card. And I've had some complaints from folks who wanted to know why, because they're a janitor or they're just a cleanup technician or working when the plant is actually closed, having to have these cards. It's reminiscent of the old sheriff's card where even if you were just serving bacon and eggs and Bloody Marys, you had to be fingerprinted to get a job. So I understand you wanting to be careful of who's in the facility, but I'm just wanting to understand. I also would like to understand where these agent cards fit and why those particular employees need to be backgrounded to clean the floors.
Sure. Thank you, Chair. And again, Tyler Klimas for the record. And, a couple things on this. The way the policy is laid out, it's ensuring that every single individual in these facilities has an agent card and we know who's there or who should be there, I believe is just critical at this juncture. We're still in our infancy as an industry, even with the 3 years that recreational sales have been operating. I certainly understand while some individuals feel like they may not have, a significant role. I mean, we're dealing with product and cannabis that we all know where this has come from, right? And it's not like other product and diversion and product leaving a facility. There's only one place where that goes, right? And that's the illicit market or in the possession of minors and those things that we have to. We feel that it's so important that we have control over that. And, maybe as this industry moves forward and this regulatory body moves forward, there's opportunity to look at those things. But I'll give you an example. We show up to a facility.
And Mr. Klimas, that you've answered my question.
Okay.
Thank you. We've got really limited time, and I
Sure.
love that you want to be able to share everything with us. But
Sure.
I think I can do a little more investigating. But is that agent card actually statutory, or was that a regulatory decision when it gets down to that level?
I believe it's statutory that every single cannabis establishment agent, no matter what, if they work in the facility, they must be registered through the CCB.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to get that on the record so people understand exactly why that needs to occur. So I don't think I see anyone else with any questions at this time, looking over the gallery view that I have in front of me. So with that, if you could go ahead and go to your first budget, please.
Okay, great. Thank you, Chair. Tyler Klimas again for the record. So now I'll go through our budget requests. I would also just like to say before we get started that we developed these requests internally, but also in coordination with both former Chief Justice Michael Douglas and former Gaming Control Board Chair Dennis Nylander. These are both board members of the CCB, but they were instrumental in helping to further conceptualize what was important for this agency, both in how it proceeded through disciplinary proceedings and and in its organization and structure. So I just wanted to put that out there. I'll start first with Decision Unit E805. This, which I alluded to earlier, reclassifies 3 current mid-level supervisory positions into executive level chief positions. You see the slide says the gaming model, because again, we're tasked with regulating the cannabis industry like the GCB regulates gaming. So naturally, the GCB model of organization makes sense and is something that we need to emulate. Although, obviously, on a smaller scale, gaming has 6 chiefs and 6 deputy chiefs. Hopefully, Chair Gibson, I'm right on that. But this reclassification not only solidifies the needed reorganization of the CCB, but it brings this agency in line with its plan to, focus on expanding, which it will as the industry continues to expand greatly. These positions like the Health Program Manager Series, these are carryovers from the medical days at the Department of Health and Human Services. Frankly, they're outdated, and their classification doesn't really reflect what is now needed in our current position, in our position where they're currently filled, and they're all here with me today, these individuals, they need to be elevated, both to match what I've asked them to begin doing and to provide for true executive level decision-making authority. There are too many functions of this industry that we have to regulate and oversee without having this kind of executive team in place. And, moving forward in years to come, these unclassified positions, being unclassified, will allow us to continue to attract future talent to this agency. And again, we just want to be able to compete with the talent level at the Gaming Control Board. So I'll move on to the next decision unit. This is E237. This request would add 3 additional marijuana program inspectors to our staff. They would join the 7 inspectors that we currently have on staff. That includes the lab inspectors. These 3 positions are needed, not only to keep up with our requirement to inspect each cannabis facility once a year. This is an important point because, there's going to be 50 already issued licenses, retail facilities that are going to be coming online in the next year. The reason for this is not because of a new licensing round. This is a result of the litigation that's settled in part recently. So that's going to open up, we currently have, I think, around 80 retail facilities. So we're going to get 50, which is a large increase for what we're currently inspecting right now. But beyond that, what I consider even more important is the ability now to go beyond just an annual inspection requirement. We have to have the ability to perform more follow-up inspections, more spot inspections. And we also need the capacity for our field staff to work together on any kinds of enforcement initiatives that we feel are necessary or to address new issues that come up on a day-to-day basis. For a real-world example, I get calls often from local law enforcement this week, that happen to come across a warehouse with what appears to be cannabis in it, right? And they aren't licensed by the state. Well, the owner says it's hemp, and maybe it is, and maybe it's not. But I have to have the ability to send my experts, and we do go out there, but to send my experts, which are my inspectors who know product, to be able to go out there and work with our partners without worrying about bandwidth concerns and keeping up with, an annual inspection requirement. So we desperately need that extra capacity. The next decision unit is 239. This request adds 3 auditors to our staff. So very similar to the request for inspectors. They would join the 5 auditors we currently have on staff. Now, the reasoning for this request is, again, similar to what I just discussed. Obviously, new licenses that are coming on board in the next year and also bandwidth to perform additional audits. But I'd like to share this audit team has gone through some significant changes over the past 6 months, changes that we're excited to have the chance to build upon with these new positions. Our auditors historically would go out to audit a facility in person along with an inspector as a team. So 1 auditor, 1 inspector. That process often found one agent finishing his or her work first and the other forced to sit around until the other was done. So obviously we had a lot of efficiencies to gain in this department. So beyond splitting the teams up, we took a hard look at what the auditors were actually auditing, and if it was truly meeting our needs or the needs of the industry as we sit here today, are we being proactive enough? So I think some in this joint committee probably remember the LCB audit that came out mid-year in 2019, I believe. I wasn't here. I came shortly thereafter, but it was filled with analysis that the prior oversight body the Marijuana Enforcement Division was really missing out by not auditing Metric, that seed-to-sale tracking system. That's the system that has all the data on all products from facilities that we control. And auditing that data just wasn't a real big focus, at least proactively. So it wasn't difficult to agree with those findings, and I certainly appreciate the LCB's work on putting that together, and for me to have that when I came in. So what we implemented last year was a number of changes and new procedures for auditors to focus on. We had our Metric team lead, so our Metric expert, take the lead in designing a completely new audit process. This resulted in a bigger focus on desk audits and comparing data from a number of different sources to identify non-compliance. So now auditors' main function is to operate within the Metric system, look for anomalies or red flags, things like monthly inventory reports, quarterly Metric reports, and the reports they submit to taxation, and then kind of looking at them holistically, which wasn't happening. Now and already we're starting to see good results with this process. A number of weeks ago, auditor who has been an auditor for a number of years, so he bought into the new process, which our auditors have. During one of these audits, these Metric audits, he found a licensee that was reporting, sales of a certain category of product in Metric, sending us a monthly report, which they're required to, of these sales. But then what he was sending to, or the licensee was sending to taxation, was completely different categories, which are taxed different. So what we found right there is that the taxes this licensee was potentially paying was not what they should be paying. And again, right there, we're protecting revenue for the state, cracking down on any diversion of product, and that would not have been caught under the audit process that was in the prior oversight body. The information was always available, it just wasn't being utilized. So I'll move on to Decision Unit E240. This would add an additional compliance audit investigator to join the investigations team. I'm not going to go too far into this. I already discussed the makeup of this new investigations division and the importance of it to adhere to the public policy and do these in-depth background investigations. The division is still working through outstanding requests on transfers and sales due to that extended review period that was put into place. And in addition to really just building out our process and investigating more complex transactions, the more we move forward, the more complex they're getting. And so these resources are critical and very much needed for that team. Next decision unit is E226. This is the request for a management analyst 2 to join our fiscal team and oversee, among other things, time and effort billings. Time and effort billing provides this agency with a substantial source of operating funds. We have worked over the last few months to expand time and effort billing and clarify our time and effort billing through regulation. And this is in an effort to kind of align it somewhat with the way gaming charges for its work. When we came on board and took over in July, the time and effort billing process, which Marijuana Enforcement Division always billed for time and effort, but it needed quite a bit of an overhaul. And this position's main role will be ensure that we have timely billings and timely collections, which was something that needed to be addressed. I think it was a policy issue, which we fixed, and then a resource issue, which hopefully we will fix. Slide 25. So this is Decision Unit E229. This is a request for an administrative law judge and a legal secretary to assist the CCB in hearing disciplinary matters before they come in front of the board for final action. This is a part-time board, so an ALJ is needed to help process and move our disciplinary cases along expeditiously. Our disciplinary process now is much different than the past oversight body. Our regulation enforcement of the industry is much more strict, again, as laid out by the public policy in 8533. So, what we're looking at right now, we're expecting upwards of 40 to 45 disciplinary cases will be filed by the end of the fiscal year. I believe 24 were filed in the first half of this fiscal year alone. And as more licenses come online, again, we anticipate this number to increase. I'd also like to add that the civil penalties we collect as a result of disciplinary action do provide a significant source of revenue to the agency. Fiscal year to date, the CCB, so in 8 months, has collected over $1.5 million in civil penalties. Now, one of those civil penalties was a $1.25 million fine that the board issued in July, so a bit of an outlier. However, the other civil penalties have resulted in collecting over $300,000 for the agency in this fiscal year. To provide context, the Marijuana Enforcement Division collected just over $100,000 in civil penalties all of last fiscal year. So that gets us through our FTE requests. I'll move much more quickly through the remaining requests. We have Decision Unit E231 that requests registration.
If I could stop you for just a moment.
Sure.
Because there's so many new positions,
Yes,
there's a lot of questions about the new positions.
great.
So before we move on and give you a chance to take a drink, of course, to position reclassifications and everything else, let's talk about all the new positions. So I think I'm going to go to Ms. Howdigi first for her questions, and then I know some other members have asked to be recognized. So Ms. Howdigi, if you'd like to start.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I had a couple of questions. I know, thank you. You answered my first one about how, COVID-19 has kind of impacted the operations. I saw your slide, which was very informative. So thank you. But my first question, I know you have been addressing a number of backlogs in the disciplinary cases, unpaid taxes from licensees, registration cards, and litigation, outstanding litigation. Can you just give us a quick update on the backlog of work for the agency and how you're addressing that backlog? I'm assuming that's what some of the positions are needed for, but if you would just give us a little bit more information.
Sure. And so I'll start, and thank you, Assemblywoman, for the question. Tyler Klimas, for the record. I'll start with the disciplinary cases. I mean, it's a backlog because they're sitting out there, right? There's obviously no time frame, but just bad policy to have disciplinary action sitting out there. And so when we took the reins in July, again, we found cases that just were sitting there from 2018. And so we work extremely closely with the Attorney General's office. We're intertwined by the bill. And so, they've done an incredible job of trying to go backwards. A lot of the staff is not here anymore, but go through, piece together those, work with the licensees and bring them up from the board so we can kind of clear the decks. We are just about through with those. We obviously didn't stop regulating the industry at the same time. So we've worked in conjunction, right? So on any given board agenda, Assemblywoman, you may see, a case from 2018 and then two cases, from last month. And so just kind of working to get through them, but not stopping what we're supposed to be doing now. So we're very close. I don't have a number for you, maybe one or two left that are really some of the older ones. On the agent cards, and this has been quite a big challenge for us and continues to be, but we're making really good progress. I think we didn't realize some of the resources that would really be lost transitioning from Department of Taxation that has 400 employees to a 50 FTE Cannabis Compliance Board. One of those resources that we lost was an 18-person in-person office in the Grand Sawyer on the first floor, right? So we had windows of in-person service that you could go in and get an agent card on the same day. We knew we were going to lose that. We lost it sooner because of COVID, Assemblywoman, right? So we all lost that process of the in-person in March. However, we were always going to lose that, and that was something that was fairly tough for this agency to absorb. So what we did was we started moving everything online. I mean, they were still using paper applications, and I talked about that a little bit. So we worked through the system, knowing we were never going to get 20 staff to have in-person. We took this time during COVID to try to change the actual process. We've put so much online. We've automated responses during the agent card process. We've sped it up considerably. There's still a 7 to 10 delay because, we can't accept credit cards, right? It's cannabis. It's still federally illegal. And so the cost, the $150 for your agent card has to be mailed in if it's not in person. And so that's 7 to 10 days right there as somebody mails in a check. And that's something that we really can't get around right now. However, we're working on ACH payments and putting those online so you'll be able to at least pay with a check. We've also developed a revolving account. It's a pilot program right now with a handful of licensees. So they can kind of put a deposit, let's say $10,000 with the CCB. And so with their employees, they can draw from that without having to send in a check every single time. Gaming does an incredible job, and they've provided some of their resources to help us conceptualize what that revolving account looks like, but that's helped too. Assemblywoman, I don't want to tell you that we're through that agent card. And we're through the backlog. We're just not through the efficiencies. I'm still paying some overtime. We're still, our folks are still just working their tails off to get through these and keep up to date. But we're hoping as well with that second year renewal. So that decrease next year in agent card submissions, which I talked about, may provide that last bit of breathing room for us to get up to speed on that.
Thank you. And then I had a couple more questions, but I'm just going to loop them into one because I just want a little bit more details on the position. So if you could walk me through one, how the management analyst position is going to help with the daily operations of your fiscal section. And then two, how your administrative law judge and legal secretary are going to improve the administrative hearing process. So just how those two positions are going to improve their areas.
Absolutely. Thank you, Assemblywoman Tyler Klimas, again for the record. So again,
Mr. Klimas, if you could kind of keep your answers succinct, that would help us a lot. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you. So again, time and effort, very important part of providing resources for our operations. Again, they've always billed, or this agency's always billed for time and effort, but it was kind of handled haphazardly. It wasn't controlled, and somebody would send out the billing, somebody else would wait to receive the payment, and then there was nobody to check if it was ever paid. And so that's why a management analyst too, given our resources in fiscal, will be able to own that process and make sure from the start to finish that time and effort is moving consistently and efficiently. And the administrative law judge, again, we're starting to actually discipline and regulate this industry, and these cases are becoming more and more frequent. And it's a part-time board, right? So they're not full-time, and they could not hear those hearings themselves, although they have the option to do so. We've already been utilizing this process, but having our own dedicated ALJ, we've been using taxation's ALJ, to be honest with you, and we have to work around their schedule. And thankfully, taxation has allowed us to use their ALJ, but it's just not efficient, and we certainly have the capacity to utilize our own. And again, that prevents a future backlog of disciplinary cases to build up, similar to what we inherited.
And thank you, Mr. Klimas. That actually answered my questions. I appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, you're on mute.
Yep, it was going to happen sooner or later. So I neglected to recognize Assemblyman Roberts earlier. I apologize, Assemblyman. Little slow on the uptake. It's a Friday morning, so I'd like to go ahead and recognize him for his question from earlier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really appreciated it. It was more, it was a little on the policy side, but it also deals with the budget. And I don't need a really long, detailed answer, but I was just curious as to, it seems like a lot of the positions and a lot of your mission now is really focused on the industry. And I didn't know if there was any plans in the future to go after non-licensed folks, and what your plan for that was, or is there one?
Thank you, Assemblyman, and Tyler Klimas again for the record, and I'll be brief, and we can always have future conversations. Yes, so what you're talking about is the illicit market, and we feel comfortable with the control we have on our licensees, and our licensees, not participating in the illicit market. What you're talking about is the illicit market that uses the legal framework as a shield to go, operate on the illicit market without any kind of regulations. So yes, that is tax revenue for the state that we are not collecting. Therefore, it is critical and important. We currently work with state and local law enforcement with some of the narcotic teams right now on those issues. We see it a lot with deliveries. So a car pulls up to a house and you don't know if that's a state license delivery or not. And so we see it a ton on the delivery side of things. We have 4 post-certified enforcement officers. 2 are on hold right now, so we should get 2 back on July 1st. And I think that was a recognition by the legislature that dealing with the illicit market in itself is very important. So we'll look to expand on that, but we have now post-certified officers on roll. They're working through those things, and we definitely anticipate building out on those efforts.
Thank you very much for the answer, and I appreciate that you're really looking at that angle, because it is a lost tax revenue, and it's pretty prevalent, and so anything we can do to help, I'm here. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Robertson. Again, I apologize for not recognizing you earlier at the appropriate time. So with that, I believe I have Mr. Watts has a couple of questions.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just really briefly on Decision Unit E239 with the additional audit positions. It looks like based on the estimated amount of time that would be needed to complete the audit workload, there would need to be 12 positions, but under the recommended budget, your agency would only get up to 11. So I'm just wondering, do you feel that under this budget you'll be able to fulfill your compliance responsibilities, and how will you be monitoring to determine if additional positions are needed in order to meet the workload for the agency?
Thank you, Assemblyman. Tyler Klimas again for the record. And as we start moving through these processes, and changing the way we do things, we're going to need more technical expertise, but, not necessarily all the same technical expertise, right? And so, what I feel with starting with 3, and given the fact that we have 2 on vacancy hold that are going to come in July, that's going to be, we're going to have our hands full with attracting the kind of folks that we really need to bring on. And so, hey, while I have grand plans for what this agency should look like as the years go on, and I do feel it's going to continue to expand, I feel like starting with 3, knowing that we have to take our time to make sure we have the right individuals with the right background and experience to come in and address the needs that we're still figuring out, right? What our true needs are as we maneuver 8 months in and to this agency. So, Assemblyman, that's why I feel that 3 is appropriate for us to get started. Absolutely, we'll monitor the needs and will not be shy about whether that's in the interim or next legislative session, reporting to you what the results of those 3 positions are and if there's a need for more.
Thank you, Mr. Klimas. I appreciate that. And also on that note, I know that you're implementing a new auditing process, and that may provide some efficiencies. Can you just give a quick status update on that new auditing process, related to metric and any impact that might have on the audit workload, or any thoughts you have on the impact that may have?
Sure, Assemblyman, thanks for the question. Tyler Klimas again for the record. And yeah, I touched on it earlier. We're really kind of excited that that our audit division is starting to do the audits that are really going to make an impact. The metric system, seed to sale tracking system, is a treasure trove of data. It's something that no other industry has because we did it at the start. And, but it's only as good, right? Data is only good as how you use it, or how you're able to utilize it. And so just to reiterate what I said before, we took our metric leads. So we had, business process analysts that kind of oversaw metric, knew metric the best, but wasn't an auditor. So it was just controlling of a metric. And so we had her design what an audit in metric should look like, what they should be looking for. And then we took the experience of auditors as well and mixed it with that. And they kind of created it themselves and together. That's taken place over the last few months. And I gave that example. I won't give it again, but efficiencies, absolutely. And then what efficiencies give us is increased capacity, which is what we need. A single audit on a licensee a year, well, let's increase that. Let's do follow-up. We're working much better with taxation now. If they see an issue, they can call us, and now we can work on that together, which we're already working together on many different aspects of these audits. So it's just that kind of increased capacity that we get back by finding the efficiencies, and especially with this new audit process.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And so it sounds like you'll be keeping a close eye on how your workload matches up with your staffing capacity, and hopefully some of those efficiencies assist with managing that workload. If it's all right with the chair, I'd like to ask one more question about Decision Unit E240. And I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit more on the recommendation for that compliance audit investigator position.
Sure. Thank you for the question. Tyler Klimas again for the record. So this investigation, or this position, which would join the investigations division, this is probably the biggest component of what the CCB does now, which wasn't being done before. I think this was also the biggest component of the public policy laid out in AB 533. That was, we as a state do not feel comfortable or confident with who's already in the industry because of these sales that would happen. And we didn't have the right mechanisms in place to investigate and do background checks. And then going forward, for new people who want to come in, we had no processes in place to do an in-depth dive because, you know, what AB 533 wanted the CCB to do is focus more on the suitability of characters, right? Because the reputation of those in the industry is a direct reflection of the reputation of the state. It's how gaming operates their kind of investigations division and the work they've done over 5 decades. And so we created this division with the resources we have, and this adds to that. And again, we had an extended review period, so a lot of transfers just stopped until we were able to get the right processes in place. And so we're still digging out from that a little bit. So this is going to help not only get through that backlog, but continue to expand on those efforts for the investigations division going forward.
Great. Thank you for that. And thank you, Madam Chair, for the questions.
You're welcome, Mr. Watts. Senator Kekepper, did you still have a question? I just noticed you'd asked to be recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Klimas, I appreciate certainly the need for the administrative law judge as it relates to all of the challenges and appeals that are being made. Have you thought about whether it would be appropriate to house that outside of the agency? I've had concern for some time now that our administrative law judges are housed in one side of the argument, right? If you're challenging an argument from or a determination from the Department of Taxation, you have to sit before a judge who's an employee of the Department of Taxation. The same would be true in this case. You're currently contracting or working with the Department of Tax with their ALJs. We thought about whether it would be appropriate to continue a process whereby you're working with an outside agency and their judges.
Thank you, Senator, for the question. Tyler Klimas for the record. You know, I'm learning through this process, Senator. I do, you know, and I have come to learn that there's rights of, what is it, the Department of Administration, I think, has some, like a hearings division. So I certainly understand that. This is what we've been used to and what I was given when we came from taxation. So, you know, there's a benefit as well to an ALJ that is dedicated, given the complexity of the cannabis industry. Sometimes it's how I see it, in the complexity of our NCCR, which is, you know, over 130 pages of regulations, and they seemingly change, you know, or need to change on a daily basis, just given the precedent that this industry continues to set on a daily basis. So, I mean, whereas there's a situation where I don't lose that, because I think that's really, really important for you know, a judge to have that kind of expertise. I mean, certainly worth a discussion.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I certainly understand the need due to the complexity of someone who's specialized. I worry about that for applicants to ALJs. They just feel like it's walking up in front of a stacked deck. But maybe an argument for a different day. I appreciate it, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Kekepper. I kind of thought that might have been your question. So I believe with that we can. Ms. Miller, did you have a question yet still?
Yes, please, Chair Carlton. Thank you. My question is, you mentioned earlier in an earlier response about losing office space from Grant Sawyer when the agency separated. And so it makes me wonder, what is the Compliance Board's plan in trying to find office space for the 10 proposed positions? And if you could respond for both the plan in Carson City and Las Vegas.
So thank you, Assemblywoman, for the question. It's Tyler Klimas for the record. What we're currently doing right now, so just to give you an idea, even hiring the additional FTEs that AB 533 gave us, we had to procure a different office suite in Grant Sawyer. So even as we sit here right now, my team is split in two different office suites with walls between them, which obviously is not ideal for cohesiveness, especially in a new agency, but we're making it work. So, and right now, what we're working on with taxation, they have a decision unit or a budget unit for a move. I think it's a consolidation, the Department of Taxation. And so we're currently working with them, and I believe we'll be submitting a budget amendment soon. We're working with them to look at space together because we're so still intimately connected. In Assemblywoman, we share things like cash count rooms, right? They collect taxes, we collect fines and fees, security. And so our cannabis licensees would go technically pay taxes to taxation and then drive to us to pay fees. So we've kind of envisioned and realized a lot of efficiencies if our agencies stay together, at least in the same building. So that's what we're looking at doing right now. We're working with leasing services on that. And again, excited to bring our team actually together for the first time. In Carson City, we still have a little bit of capacity, so we have no concerns on capacity right now as we sit in Carson City. Also connected with taxation in the same building in Carson City.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
So I believe that takes care of all the questions on the new positions. So Mr. Klimas, if we could go ahead and address the position reclassifications.
Yes, Madam Chair, are we going back to that decision unit? I went through that one at the beginning.
Did I? Okay, all right, then let's go ahead and just go. I have questions on that also, so I just wanted to make sure that folks had the opportunity to hear everything.
We do still have some I haven't gone through.
Okay, go ahead and proceed with your presentation and then we'll go from there.
Great. So we will, and Tiana, you may need to bring back up that, yeah, that's great. So we'll start with slide 26, Tiana. This is decision unit 231. This requests registration fees for 2 additional inspectors to attend food safety training. 232, just request funding for subscriptions to local news outlets for our communications department, which is our public information officer. 233 requests funding for 2 CCB staff to attend the semi-annual state regulators roundtable meeting. This is a meeting of all of our state counterparts. And then decision unit E300 requests funding for protective equipment for our field agents. Moving on to E227, this requests funding for members of our investigations team, which we've talked about, to attend a financial and business writing investigation program. This is through the International Center for Gaming Regulation at UNLV. Moving forward with equipment replacements and software requests, we have E710. This replaces computers, monitors, and ancillary equipment on the replacement schedule, according to the budget building manual. E712, this replaces our agent card printers, which are on a 5-year replacement schedule. Decision unit E714, this provides for software renewals. And again, I'm happy to go in more detail. And then E720 funds Adobe Acrobat licenses for staff. E235, this funds website hosting service and also funds our new communication tools that we use to issue guidance to the public and licensees. And then finally, decision unit E681, this is a reduction. This reduces our MSA funding for both FY22 and 23. And then one final thing that doesn't have a slide, and it's a component of our budget, is the reduction of our 90-day reserve balance. It brings it down to a 60-day reserve balance. I will say, I think it does show in the budget report it's a 58-day balance due to, I think, a couple unique final budget tweaks kind of made by the GFO. I think that's going to be corrected. Even if it's not, 58 days remains absolutely viable for the CCB, and happy to talk through that as well. So, Madam Chair, members of the Joint Committee, I appreciate you bearing with me on the presentation, and we can move to questions again.
And thank you there we go. Thank you very much, Mr. Klimas. So with that, I know there are a couple of other questions. So I believe Senator Brooks had a question.
Thank you, Chair Carlton. I did have a question on the reclassification, but you answered it, I think, thoroughly when you were presenting it the first time, and I appreciate that.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Senator. So Ms. Gorlo, did you, I think you had wanted to be recognized for a question?
Yes, thank you, Chair Carlton. I just want some clarification on the reserve balance. Looks like according to my notes that you no longer need a 90-day, but you have a 58-day. How many days would be sufficient for an operating reserve?
Assemblywoman, thank you. That's actually a really great question. Tyler Klimas for the record. So I'm going to approach it from the back end real quick. 90-day reserve was put into place at the beginning of the medical days when they, obviously the operations don't touch and never touch the general fund. And so that's where it was created. So like 2014, all their license renewals were always up in November. So they had that gap of the fiscal year until November where they started actually realizing funds. The 90-day reserve simply just kind of carried over through all the iterations until we're at now. To give you an idea, we most of our renewals now come in on July 1st. That's the renewal periods when they were issued. And when I say most, I mean to the tune of almost $2.5 million comes in. And so I'm saying all of this because I'm not going to be able to answer your question on what would be sufficient. All I can tell you is that a 90-day is not necessary. And so reducing that to a 60-day would be appropriate for us. However, I'm happy to do those calculations and come back with you with a number because that's absolutely a great question on that reserve issue.
Thank you. I think you answered my question thoroughly. So thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. So if you could just briefly talk about the dollars that are transferred over to the DSA and the time frame around that.
Okay, great. And I will probably then move Chair Tyler Klimas for the record to my fiscal lead, Jason, who kind of works on those transactions to give you a better idea of the actual timeline of when we transfer those or revert those back to the DSA. Is that okay, Madam Chair?
Oh, that's perfectly fine. Phone a friend is part of the game plan in this committee, so
Great.
It's not a problem.
So Jason, if you're on, if you could answer the chair's question, it would be great.
Thank you, Tyler, and thank you, Chair, for the question. This is Jason Giesler, Administrative Services Officer for the CCB. The DSA transfer, historically, it happens at the end of every fiscal year. There has been times during the middle of fiscal year where the DSA has come and asked for us for an early partial transfer, which we've done. But, it's usually to get them through any difficult times or things that they may have, funding issues on their own. But it happens upon fiscal year end. We close. We basically calculate what the 90-day reserve is going forward to the new fiscal year. And then the remaining balance is swept to the DSA upon close of the fiscal year.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I always want to make sure that we get on the record that, yes, this money is going to the DSA. There was a lot of misinformation out there for a number of years on this. So I always want to make sure that we make that part of the record when we have the conversation about this board and these policies and those transfers. So with that, committee members, I believe that addresses all the questions that I have for Mr. Klimas. Does anyone else have a question for him at this time? I'm looking to see if anyone's wishing to be recognized. I don't believe so. Speak now or forever hold your peace. No? Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Klimas. We appreciate. We can definitely see your passion for your job, and we do appreciate that. So thank you very much for all of the information.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, committee.
Okay. So committee members, with that, I believe we can move on to our next budget presentation for today, which is the Gaming Control Board. It's regulatory day here in Ways and Means and Senate Finance. So if I could go ahead, and I believe we're going to have Mr. Gibson.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, Madam Chair Carlton and members of Assembly Ways and Means and Senate Finance. It's good to be here with you today. I am going to discuss our budget. I'd ask Mike Morton, if you please put our presentation up. We'll start going through it for you quickly.
Absolutely.
Okay. So again, I'm Brent Gibson. I'm the chairman of the Gaming Control Board. Our vision statement for the Gaming Control Board is to be the premier gaming regulator recognized in the world, recognized for effectiveness in ensuring gaming in Nevada is conducted honestly, competitively, and free from corrupt developments. Our mission statement is that the board promotes confidence in Nevada's gaming industry through strict regulation of all persons, locations, practices, associations, and related gaming activities to support a sustainable and growing economy. The board protects the integrity and stability of the industry and ensures collection of gaming taxes and fees, which are an essential source of state revenue. Please go on. This is a general overview of our staffing. The board and commission together, it's a bifurcated regulatory structure. We have a commission that consists of 5 members and 5 members of the commission and 1 staff member. We have the board that has 3 full-time members and 391 staff members. This is roughly how they're allocated. Those that are general administration are 60. For board and commission, we have law enforcement agents, 122 that are certified through post and have other certifications or are deputized with other agencies. We have 116 that are in the audit space. These are CPAs, MBAs, and so on. They go out and they conduct audits at non-restricted and restricted licensees, and they work in the audit and tax and license divisions primarily. We have technologists, those who are trained as engineers and computer scientists, and these are roughly 26. They test and monitor gaming devices and equipment. We have investigators that do the front-end investigations of all gaming licensees, applicants, individuals, and companies, including publicly traded companies. 76 of those, and we currently have no tribal or cross-jurisdictional tribal dedicated people. So 400 total. Please go ahead, Mike. This is our board total fiscal year general fund collections. You can see the precipitous drop in fiscal year 20. Please go ahead, Mike. This slide shows our ratio of total expenditures to total general fund collections. We did not collect as much in fiscal year 20 as we noted. Our expenditures remained roughly the same. There were some savings, but you can see that our ratio is lower in fiscal year 20 than it was in the past. Please go ahead, Mike. This slide is it shows our general fund, the gaming industry's general fund revenue collection as a piece of the general fund's total sort of, broken out commitments from various industries. And according to our current numbers, the Gaming Control Board general fund collections are roughly 17.3% of state general fund collections. Please go ahead. This is a good slide to show, and this is one I enjoy showing. This is the gaming regulatory budget by jurisdiction for fiscal year 20. As you'll see on this slide, Nevada, we don't. Our budget is very small compared to the size of our gaming industry. We're roughly 25% of all gaming activity. Nevada represents 25% of all gaming activity and gaming collections and spend in the country. And our budget is on par with some very small jurisdictions and is surpassed by those that have much smaller gaming markets than we do, including New Jersey, Maryland, New York, and Illinois. Please go ahead, Mike. So our challenges, why we need good people, why it's a challenge to retain these people. We have there's lots of evolution in the gaming industry right now. We're dealing with things like cashless wagering. We need technologists to help us understand wagering accounts and wallets. Wagering accounts are accounts that are funded with funds, and electronically they're able to be used to fund a wager directly. A wallet is also a means of storing money in a sort of electronic format, and it can be used to spend on various items within a casino, with money transferred to a wagering account or used to spend on gaming as well. The funding methods, we have e-commerce payment methods. We have electronic games now that have multiple games that are offered on a single device. The challenge with these is that it requires us to be able to track the money, because different kinds of games are taxed and controlled differently. So it's a challenge for our technologists and for our auditors. We have a significant intersection of the use of personal mobile devices in gaming. This is not mobile gaming, but their personal phones are used on them. Monies are held. They're used to validate a person's identity, their age. You can game with a mobile device, and they're used for a number of other things. There are questions about the cloud in gaming, where you can host servers and items like that. Security of the cloud is a major issue for us. We have emerging issues such as wagering on esports events. We have foreign sports wagering. We have lots of other event approvals for events that occur in foreign jurisdictions. Please go ahead. The gaming industry is a demanding industry. It's one that's very competitive and growing in competitiveness across the country. The industry it demands or requires a quick turnaround on a number of things, including game device approval. And with the increase in gaming throughout the U.S., and new manufacturers and operators are coming to Nevada with little or no experience, this creates a delta for our lab in particular, but for the entire board, requiring us to do additional review and study of their devices and help them through the process to get up to the level of our standards, which requires a lot of time and expertise on the part of our people. Other areas we're seeing, we need expertise. We need people trained in cyber defense. We're seeing attacks on our licensees and on our licensees by bad actors. We're seeing malware, ransomware, and so on being lodged on our licensees' computers. It's fairly well known, and it's obvious that our licensees they are a great store of cash and money, and because of that, they're a target for cyber attacks. Internally, we struggle to retain employees, just like every other state government agency. We have parity issues with our post-certified officers, with local governments, as we always will. We have a number of our chiefs who are at the end of their state government careers, and potentially will lose institutional knowledge as a result of retirements. We have what I call unsustainable methods of collecting investigative fees. And what we mean by this is that we have the investigative division is one funded entirely by investigative fees, and so there's no general fund that goes into it. We're constantly trying to ensure that the board implements and maintains the best practices for information security. So there's ISO certification, there's NIST certification. This is a challenge, but in order for us to go out and enforce against licensees for being hacked and not maintaining cybersecurity standards, we need to make sure that I believe that we have the moral high ground and ourselves are adequately protected with InfoSec. And so this costs money, and it requires expertise. We're in the continued process of migrating our systems from a COBOL-based system, which is our language, which is a very old programming language, to a more modern one. Next slide, please. Our expenditures, due to COVID-19, we had some changes in the way we spend our personnel. We implemented teleworking for the majority of our staff. The enforcement division is in the field constantly. They do a lot of the COVID mitigation enforcement work. That is, they go onto casino floors, they go into casinos generally. They ensure that there are dividers between people who are wagering at tables. They ensure that every other wagering chair is empty at a table. They ensure that the occupancy limitations on the gaming floor are maintained. We've under the hiring freeze that was instituted by the governor, and in the executive branch, we've maintained vacant positions. During the special session, we lost about $2.1 million as a result of cuts. And teleworking, frankly, makes it very difficult for us to train new employees. So we need to ramp up our training of new employees and even existing ones. Travel, as a result of COVID, the majority of travel ceased in March of 2020. This has forced us to delay out-of-town audits, and it's pushed back a number of our audits to fiscal year 22. We try to operate on a 2.5-year audit cycle, which is ideal. We try to we pride ourselves greatly in maintaining a 99% tax collection rate within the gaming industry, which helps fund the general fund. But as a result of not being able to travel, we've been forced to rely on electronic documentation. We haven't been able to. Our audit agents also go out onto the floor. They observe the adherence to our minimum internal control standards and the way that games are played and they're operated, where the counts are conducted, and so on. And all of that in-person activity that would occur, some of it in state and much of it out of state, depending on where the licensee is housed or where they're headquartered, has not occurred. Operating telecommuting has reduced expenditures like supplies and shredding services. So there are some savings. The hiring freezes cost contracts like drug screening deceased, which is not a good thing. It has saved a little bit of money, but it's not a good thing. And training, planned trainings that were planned from March 2020 through the end of the fiscal year were canceled. Next slide, please. So prior to June for 2020, the COVID-19 response, the agency confirmed that the entire gaming industry was closed within 24 hours of the governor's issuance of Emergency Directive 2. The chair of the board aided in statewide efforts in acquiring PPE during the early months of the pandemic as part of a task force that was created and impaneled by the governor. The board has issued policy memoranda during the 78-day closure that was April 21 to May 5 to create regulatory efficiencies for when the industry was authorized to open. We provided assistance to Nevada's federal delegation and the federal lobbying efforts to ensure that small gaming companies in Nevada were eligible for PPP loans. We have published health and safety policies for reopening for more than a month before reopening of the industry. We continue to use those to guide the submission of the large gathering plans and to review those. Let's see here. These were ratified by the Gaming Commission and amended. They continue to be amended even now. We held a regulatory workshop on the health and safety issues related to the safe reopening of the industry, and we reviewed and approved health and safety plans for all 458 non-restricted licenses prior to their reopening, and we continue to review these. When gaming operations were authorized to resume on June 4, the board implemented a concerted statewide plan to complete health and safety inspections statewide. We continue to do that. Since June 4th, the Gaming Control Board, led by our enforcement chief, James Taylor, we conducted 25,388 health and safety inspections of gaming licensees. These inspections continue to be conducted every day. This is current through March 5, 2021. So we've done, for our larger licensees, non-restricted, we've done 10,251 inspections. And for our restricted licensees, these are bars and taverns primarily, 15,137 inspections. I get a report every day on the inspections that are conducted, and we do some number every single week. Since the governor's declaration of emergency on March 12th, the board has conducted 92,611 hours of COVID-19 response work. And this work will continue into the remaining part of fiscal year 21. I joke occasionally that I thought I'd be coming in here to regulate gaming, and I do more COVID work, COVID vaccination work, and preparation for COVID-related items than I do gaming. That is a large part of my day every day. We participate and are members of multiple statewide mitigation efforts. We participate with EMS, local health districts, and local government enforcement. We're on calls every single day that relate to COVID mitigation, current trends and numbers, vaccination efforts, or ICU capacity, ventilator use, and so on. We assist in coordinating. We have assisted in coordinating vaccine allocation and distribution to the gaming industry through our notice process and through a planning process that was announced yesterday, and we're very proud of that work. Thrilled to see the gaming industry get back up on its feet, and we think it's that vaccination is critical to getting Nevada's gaming industry back on its feet in the best and most robust way. Next slide, please. This is the Gaming Commission's budget. You'll see their total numbers, and these are, we have expenditures, inflation, adjustments, and fringe. This is, so the biennium total is $1.5 million, roughly. Next slide, please. This is our budget, the Gaming Control Board's budget. And for those of you who are new, again, the board is a full-time body. Each of the 3 members of the board are full-time. So this is my only job. This is all I do every day. Same with my 2 colleagues. So you can see here our various units within the budget. We have our expenditures, and then we have adjustments, some in-state travel, increases that we're requesting, a gaming lab contract for software. We do hepatitis B vaccinations of our enforcement agents who are in contact with blood and bloodborne pathogens potentially. We have some staffing reductions, and in enhancement unit 680, we are seeking to reclassify some investigative positions and retitle several positions for a total of $89 million. Was that? Would you go back, Mike? Did I say? Okay, yeah, $89,804,000 or $804,050. Okay, next slide, please. Our in-state travel. So this enhancement unit, this is a request for additional travel for board auditors to the tune of $65,182 per year. As I mentioned earlier, travel to casinos has been delayed since March 2020 due mainly to state mandated travel restrictions, and to protect the health and safety of board employees and licensee personnel. So travel to casino sites is necessary for auditors to review the audit evidence, that is the paper documents that they're receiving now electronically. They need to see those documents, verify that they're actually the document, and they need to be able to interview personnel and perform or watch the performance of various functions on the floor, the count rooms, and so on, to ensure that they're being conducted in accordance with our minimum internal control standards. This additional funding will restore our audit cycle to its ideal 2.5-year timeline. It also reduces risk for documents being lost or destroyed or manufactured. It reduces risk for the inability to provide sufficient information from earlier portions of the audit cycle. So audit cycles, an audit will be conducted over a period of time. As time goes on and we don't we don't verify earlier information, it becomes stale.
The screen because we have an ununiform set.
Mary, okay, and it ensures that it ensures that delays in detecting noncompliance with regulatory issues and improper reporting of revenue or weakened control environments are detected, and that we can take action and reform that quickly. Next slide, please. We have a request for a gaming lab contract. We have software that we maintain. That's a forensic tool. It allows the board to, under the authority in NRS 463, to take data off of mobile devices when necessary. This is a fairly minor cost, but it's $3,700 per year. It's critical to enable us to maintain our access to the software. Without the software, we can't use the evidence that we gather from mobile devices in a court of law. So if there are custody issues. Next slide, please. We, in enhancement unit 233, we're asking for, this is funding for our hepatitis B vaccination of our enforcement division agents. This is a federally mandated requirement under OSHA. And these vaccinations, of course, are offered at no cost to our employees. We have we have enforcement division unclassified staff that meet the criteria for needing the hepatitis B vaccine. 94, in fact. Next slide, please. So reductions in staffing. Let's see here. We are scheduled to lose 15 positions that are proposed for reduction. We have 2 audit agents, 1 tax and license agent, 2 enforcement agents, 2 gaming technicians, 1 administrative assistant 4, 1 admin 3, and 6 admin 2s. And these loss of positions are a result of reductions in the state budget and constraints that issue from that. We came to the conclusion of when we were asked to make the reductions in force, we attempted to balance general fund versus fee-funded positions, and we were looking at things like protecting the integrity and stability of the gaming industry and our ability to maintain public confidence and trust through regulation, and of course the ability of the state to collect and to ensure that revenue is collected accurately in time. Next slide, please. Reduction in unclassified staff. So again, digging in a little bit more, 2 agent positions from the audit division. So these are CPAs that go out and audit. Group 1 licensees. These are larger casinos. Both positions are in Las Vegas, and I mean the potential threat here is that reduction in staffing may cause audit cycles to increase. Again, the ideal timeline is a 2.5-year audit cycle. Statutorily, we're mandated to, or we're kept to a 3-year audit cycle. We don't want to reduce our frequency of on-site visits or our ability to review and take action for violations of minimum internal control standards. We are scheduled to lose 1 agent position from tax and license, and this agent is assigned to perform compliance reviews of Group 2 casinos, smaller casinos. It's a Carson City position, and this entire program, this tax and license division program, only has 13 positions with 5 FTEs in Northern Nevada and 8 in the South. Next slide, please. Next slide, please.
This is the next one.
Okay. We're scheduled to lose two agent positions from the enforcement division. These agents are assigned to the field services squad, and they do criminal and regulatory investigations. They handle grievances and disputes between the public and the gaming industry. They respond to licensees' issues in the field, and they conduct inspections of gaming licensees' operations. One of the positions is a Las Vegas one, and one is positioned in Reno. This is a 24/7 division. They work around the clock, and both positions are post-certified positions. We're scheduled to lose 2 electronic technician positions from our technology division. These individuals are assigned to perform gaming device verification of devices on the floor. They investigate alleged cheating incidents of gaming equipment. They evaluate customer complaints that bring into question the proper functioning of slot machines, and both positions are in Las Vegas. Next slide, please. We're scheduled to lose 1 admin 4 position from the administration division. This position supports our chief and deputy chief directly, and is in Carson City. 1 admin 3 position, which is another administration division position, and is a support person to our director of HR and training, and 6 admin 2 positions. These positions provide general clerical support and office coverage for a number of the divisions, including tax and license, admin, investigations, and enforcement. Next slide, please. We're asking for class code changes. There's no budgetary impact. We want to modernize the investigations division position name. So we'll call the coordinator of applicant services the investigative services manager. We want to change the title of Mr. Morton from our LCB staffer's position to senior research specialist position. I'm sorry, from senior research specialist position to senior research specialist. Senior policy analyst. We want to change Mike Lawton, who's our economist, the name of his position, to senior economic analyst. We want to modernize our technology division positions. The manager of our lab, we want to rename that position electronics lab. Deputy chief of technology. We want to rename our one of our lab engineers senior engineer of technology, and so on. Similar name changes to other positions in the lab. Next slide, please. I will ask Andrew to please jump in here, Andrew Tucker, who's our IT chief, and to talk about our Alpha Migration project, which is a very, very important project. Andrew, if you would.
Thank you, Chair Gibson. Good morning, members of the committee. Andrew Tucker, IT manager for the Game Control Board. The Alpha Migration project is a project that we started back in 2014 and is ongoing today. As the chair mentioned earlier, we're transitioning off of a very old technology, a COBOL-based system. This system, they began development for it back in 1982, and it still lives today, and was modified over the 30 plus years of its existence. And so we are working diligently to get off of that platform onto modern platforms. We're moving to a .NET, Microsoft.NET SQL Server backend application. And we're doing the majority of this in-house development, custom development. At times we do purchase software packages to meet our needs, but in general, the majority of it is developed in-house with the help of a technology partner. So we began, again, in 2014, we were funded in the 14-15 biennium, and it continues. And we've done a pretty good job of staying on time on budgets. We've dealt with some budget cuts, as most other people have in past bienniums, but we've been able to forge through those. Next. So we're requesting continued funding to work with our contracted vendor on this. They've been a good partner with us. They've been with us from the beginning. It's a company called Cyber Inc. And they really have become experts on the Game Control Board and our processes and how we work and, kind of our intricacies and quirks of how we work and that kind of thing. And they really have a lot of knowledge of how we do things. So continuing with them is critical to the project. They're a good-sized organization, so they can provide flexibility if we need a certain skill or role. They typically can provide that to us, so we don't have to look outside, and that's been very beneficial. As everybody else, we've gone through some pretty serious budget cuts because of the pandemic, and we're looking to get back some of that funding and continue the project. And then right now, we're focusing on the enforcement division. Work for other divisions has been put on hold simply because of the budget cuts, but through other funding, we were able to continue with our enforcement folks. Next slide. So the importance of the information that we have on the COBOL system that we have have two names for it, the alpha system or the blue screen, simply because the screen is blue. It contains the information that is critical to the board in order to do its regulatory functions. All of the information we have on the gaming licensees, all of the information we have on the gaming employees, the people working in the industry, all of the ownership and the complexities of ownership. The licensing ownership in the gaming industry is extremely complex. Owners owning owners and things. We have these neat little bubble charts we can create that show that ownership, and some of them it's just kind of a blob because there's so many parts to it. The record of the business, what's the status of a licensee, the associations with licensees, all of the revenue that we bring in goes through this system. And then the records of deposits that we take in for those tax payments and other types of things. And you can see here, we've done a lot of the migration efforts. There's still a fair amount to do, but we have made a lot of good progress. Next. So some of the challenges that we've had over it, obviously limited staffing, funding, that's, pushing the migration out to a longer period of time. One of the biggest concerns for us is the lack of expertise in the COBOL world. 10 years ago, we had people on staff who knew COBOL and could, deal with the issues that come up with that system. That has changed, and we have lost staff. They've retired, moved on. So we have one person who's getting near to retirement every day, and that person, helps keep that system up and happy. And that's a big concern for us. It is a text-based system. There's no data encryption or anything like that. Those tools don't exist in that world. It precedes modern technology. The internet didn't exist when this was built. A lot of the technologies out there today did not exist when this system first started. Limited capabilities. It's not an intuitive platform. It's difficult to get information out of it. You have to key all data into it. We've been fortunate that we've found some tools that will actually allow us to do interfaces and pull some information in and out of it, but that's a challenge, and there's costs associated with that. So it's just not a platform that we need to maintain. Next slide, please. So benefits, our new applications have greatly improved the board processes and the access to information. Information is now as opposed to tomorrow. In the old world, when information came in, often it had to be processed over a 24-hour period. And that's a real problem, right? Especially in today's world. You get requests and you need that data now. You need to provide it now. And we can do that in a much better fashion today. So that's been huge. Having access to things like validating USPS address formats. That's a big deal. We've got thousands of addresses that we have to deal with. And knowing that those addresses are correct, or at least that we need to find out how to correct them, is huge. Again, access to information, that's a big deal. And we're reducing the technology platforms we have to support, which is just smart. That's just good business. Next slide, please. So here's a summary of our progress. Location information came out in March 2015. That was a big one. Independent host promoter. That was, club venue. Hopefully you've heard that term. That was a reaction to that regulatory change. Tax information collection, that came in second quarter of 2018. All payments, all tax payments that come in, they come in through our front end portal and then flow into what we call the SAGE system, our new system. And access to that information is now. It's real time. Some others, book wagering, that's a big deal. That basically allowing the industry to electronically tell us what's going on in book wagering, things that we require of them, certain bets over a certain amount, wins over a certain amount, that type of information. They report that to us electronically now as opposed to sending us paper. Same with suspicious transaction reporting. The licensees are required to report based on certain criteria, what might be a suspicious transaction, and that is now all electronic, so they can report those to us now, and we have access to that information. And it reduces activities like that, really reduce errors, because instead of the licensee, getting it out of their system, typing it into something like Excel, and then us typing it into our system, they're just doing it once. Maybe, they may have to key it once. It may come out of their system, and then they upload it to us. So it reduces a lot of error. Independent host functionality in August, and then we implemented what's called Motorola Flex. It's a law enforcement software application that went live in December 20. That was a big win. Other law enforcement agencies across the state use this software as well. And that has always been part of our plan, is if we can find packaged software that does the job, that serves a significant piece of functionality, we will implement that. And it really didn't make sense to us to write law enforcement software when there were good software packages available. So we went forward with that. And we're working on, we just went live with what we call advanced person search. So all the persons that the Gaming Control Board manages, that system is sitting in our new SAGE application. And now we've got a very advanced search that you can, pick out all different kinds of identifiers to find people and get information on them. We're continuing to work on the person piece of the project, and a big part of that is the gaming employer registration. So the public-facing system that the licensees' HR departments use to hire people and check and see if they can work in gaming, if they have worked in gaming, and then a process to allow those gaming applicants to apply with us and go through our processes to become a gaming employee. We're in the process of moving that information off of an older system, both on the front end and off of the alpha into our new SAGE system. Next slide, please. So coming soon, shared billing and accounting. That's something that we do a fair amount of, basically investigative activities. When someone applies for a gaming license, they pay us some amount of money and we investigate them, and we, go against that account. We basically report billable time, billable expenses, and other activities against that dollar amount that they provided to us. So we're in the process of getting that done. This is farther down the road with the administration division, moving the human resources and accounting and facilities activities that we have in our old system into our modern platform. But we're really kind of waiting to see, it's good timing for us. What is Smart 21 going to provide? What do we need to, what's the delta? Smart 21 is going to be this. So what do we need to develop, if anything? It could be that in some areas we don't have to do any development because Smart 21 has met that need. So we're waiting to see what that will look like. And we weren't planning on doing that development now anyway, so it's good timing. Audit division, as part of our request in this coming biennium, we're asking for funds to purchase software for the audit division. Again, there are wonderful software packages out there that provide audit functionality. So why should we reinvent the wheel? So we're going to look and, we've obviously done some research to find out what's out there. So we're going to, if funded, we'll go forward with that and find the right software package for our auditors. Enforcement, again, the replacement of the gaming and play registration system that's going on now. In the future, investigations, applicant processing. So as they investigate that applicant, all the processes that go along with that, moving those over to the new system. And then the technology division, they have a system that's actually outside of our old alpha system, but it's starting to age as well. And that needs to be brought into the fold, as it were, and they need to become part of SAGE. So we have one system that we're doing as much of our regulatory activity in as we can. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're open to any questions.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that. I believe I do have some questions from Senator Don Darrell Loop.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thanks to all of you for the information. I think you sort of answered my first question, but I'll ask you to expound on that just a little bit. And it was has this COVID health crisis and the resulting travel restrictions during this biennium disrupted that audit cycle? And then with that, how long does the agency anticipate it'll take to return to the uniform audit cycle if the recommended in-state travel is approved?
Good morning, Madam Senator Don Darrell. So it hasn't taken us off the cycle, meaning we won't violate the 3-year statutory mandate that we audit every licensee according to that timeline. Ideally, we're on a 2.5-year cycle. What it's done, though, is it's required us to do more of the front end work and rely on on items that they're providing to us electronically. We're not able to verify the documents as well because we can't see the paper item. We can't go and see source documents, which is ideal for us. So we can get back into the swing of things with this additional enhancement. We won't be off cycle at all. So that this will get us back to where we need to be.
Thank you very much. And so then when you return to that natural cycle, your in-state travel funding will still be necessary.
It will, yes.
Okay. And then just one other question. When you were talking about you had one agent in the north and one in the south, that was just overwhelming to me. Is that enough? Does that cover what you need?
Candidly, we have a very small agency given the scope of the things that we do. Especially right now with COVID, 92,000 hours of work that we've done for COVID, and then regulating the industry during this time. It's for 400 people or 396 employees. That it's a lot of work. They work many hours. Our agency is a unique one, meaning that we're able to set our own sort of requirements. We're not a traditional agency. Our people are unclassified for the most part. They work many hours. They're highly skilled and trained. I'm incredibly impressed with what they do, but they do a whole lot with very little.
Thank you very much, and it's good to see you in your new role, Mr. Gibson.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, with that, I have some questions about the position eliminations. I have some real concerns about that. Leaving them vacant is one thing, but actually eliminating them means in future legislatures, you will have to come back and get them back again. And in looking at the list of the folks and when they actually left, a number of them, as I'm looking at it, were November and December of 19, all the way through to when the pandemic started. And we know how long it takes to replace people. So just natural attrition, people leaving. But then the pandemic happened. We had a hiring freeze. I'm just very concerned that some of the functions of these folks, especially when it comes to billable hours, doing the audit, you have the travel money for the audit, but you're going to lose some audit personnel. And then just the administrative positions that do a lot of the work for you. I just have some serious concerns about actually eliminating them. So what was the conversation between elimination and just holding them vacant, because you still get to your general fund savings by holding it vacant. And then when money does, things will get better. We're all hope and pray they're going to get better soon. Then some of those important positions you're able to fill. So could we have a conversation about that, Mr. Gibson?
Sure. Madam Chair, could I defer to our CFO, Mary Ashley, for this question?
Sure. Phone a friend.
So, in compliance with the state budget restrictions, we did propose, we looked at our staffing and our vacant positions and tried to do an equitable solution for meeting these constraints and propose these positions to be abolished, I guess. So we're unaware of how we could retain the positions with the existing requirements of the state's budgeting system. And so we would be happy to talk to staff on how to retain the 15 positions effective July 1st.
Okay. And I believe if you retain them and just hold them vacant, we'll get there, but I'm going to let you work with staff on that. Okay. I just have some very serious concerns about a lot of the work that these folks do for you. I'm always very proud when I go to other states and when we used to be able to go to conferences to brag about how great our gaming regulatory body is. You are the gold standard, and we just want to make sure that you have the resources to do that in the most expeditious way possible. So if you could go ahead and keep working on that. And then also, especially when it comes to the audit division, I think those are very, very important positions also. So with that, I believe that takes care of any questions that I have. I had hoped I would make it through this whole session and not see the word COBOL again, but unfortunately that didn't happen. It's as old as I am, and I'm leaving, so it should leave too. So with that, are there any questions on the alpha migration system? I don't believe I see anyone wishing to be recognized on that. I think we got a good explanation. Okay, committee members. If there's no other questions, I'm not seeing anyone wishing to be recognized. If you do, please pipe up. Seeing none? Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Gibson and your team.
Thank you.
Thank you for that 92,000 hours worth of work. Thank you for putting that on the record. Work that you have done dealing with COVID. It's good to know where your resources are lying and the job that you're doing. So we appreciate that.
It's a great pleasure to serve the state. Thank you very much, Madam Chair and members of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. So with that closes this particular budget committee members. Our last item on the agenda for this morning is to go to public comment. So we'll give public comment folks a couple of minutes to call in. I've got 9:58, right on time. So we'll give them a couple of minutes. So everyone please stand at ease, and we'll go to public comment in just a moment. So good morning, Broadcast Services. Is there anyone on the public comment line at this time?
Hello, Chair. This is Michael from Broadcast. The public comment line is open and working. However, we have no callers at this time.
Well, thank you very much, Broadcast Services, for all of your hard work. We couldn't do this without you. We really do appreciate you all. Thank you, committee, for your time and attention this morning. For Ways and Means members, I'm sure you've seen the change in the agenda for Monday, so there will be no Ways and Means on Monday. But believe me, we are going to make up for that towards the end of this session, so just be prepared. So with that, committee, thank you. We are adjourned.